The first thing I noticed was the handwriting. I know my wife's handwriting like I know the patterns of my own veins, and this wasn't hers. It was slanted and harsh, each letter dragged as if the person writing it had been fighting the pen the whole way down the page. The note read simply, "See you Tuesday." It was tucked into an envelope addressed to her maiden name, and the return address field was empty. She'd told me she was spending last Tuesday at her mom's place. That letter changed everything. I stood on the porch a little longer than I should have, the sun burning on my neck, my keys dangling uselessly from my hand. My heartbeat crawled up into my throat and started hammering against my molars. The envelope crinkled slightly as my grip tightened. She'd lied to me, or someone else thought they had the right to see her on a Tuesday without my knowledge. Either way, I was done sitting on assumptions. I called in sick the next day. I told my boss I had a stomach bug. It wasn't a total lie. I did feel sick, just not in the way he assumed. I spent the morning setting up a hidden camera in the living room, disguised as a sleek black router she wouldn't give a second glance to. That part was easy. The hard part was pretending everything was fine when she came home that evening with takeout, and that sweet hum in her voice she used when she didn't want to be questioned. She mentioned her mom had given her a recipe for lemon chicken. I just nodded and helped her set the table. For the next week, I watched her every move like a documentary predator. She smiled, she kissed me, she laughed at my jokes, and she made love to me like nothing was wrong. And all the while, the camera blinked silently in the background, recording every second. The following Tuesday, I told her I had to work late. She left just after 5 p.m., said she'd grab dinner on her way back. When I checked the footage later that night, my chest clamped shut like a bear trap. Around 6:14 p.m., a man walked through our front door using a key I didn't recognize. He kissed her on the mouth like he'd done it before, comfortably, possessively. I froze the frame and stared at his face. I knew it. He was in a photo on our fridge from a corporate holiday party years ago. I remember asking her who he was. "Just a guy in marketing," she'd said at the time. His hands slid around her waist and they laughed together like I never existed. That's when the rage started growing. It wasn't loud or chaotic. It was quiet, cold, and calculated. I needed more than evidence. I needed to know who he was, what he wanted from my wife, and how deep this went. So I bought a burner phone, registered it under a fake name, and used a spoofed email to contact her. Pretending to be a recruiter from a major tech firm in Denver, I offered her a fake job. 6-figure salary, flexible hours, all expenses paid relocation. I knew it was a role she would kill for, something just prestigious enough to stroke her ego. She accepted within 24 hours. No hesitation, no discussion with me. She didn't even mention it over dinner that night while I smiled at her across the table and passed her the salt. I wanted more, needed to know just how far down this rabbit hole went. I reached out to an old buddy who now worked in the security at a bank. He ran the number I'd pulled from her call history. The guy, her Tuesday man, was drowning in child support debt, had been sued for assault in his 20s, and had a bankruptcy on record. That's who she invited into our house. That's who she chose over me. I wasn't done. I contacted a freelance digital forensics expert I'd met at a tech expo years ago. He owed me a favor from back when I helped him out of a nasty data leak lawsuit. I gave him access to her laptop one afternoon while she was out grocery shopping. In under 10 minutes, he scrubbed her browser history and backed up her encrypted message threads, chats she'd hidden under archived folders. There were 4 other men. 4. One was from Seattle. Another lived only 20 minutes away. She used fake names and temporary email accounts. But the content was clear. Photos, meetups, gift receipts. She'd paid for a man's hotel stay using our joint card. By the end of the week, with my stomach churning and heart hollowed out, I called my college buddy Liam. He works in IT for a telecom company. After explaining everything, he helped me block her from accessing our cloud storage. From there, I downloaded everything. Old emails, synced phone backups, app data, deleted photos. There were dozens more images, her kissing different men, texts about meeting in coffee shops, her laughing about how he never suspects a thing. Some messages were months old. Others dated back to our anniversary. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just stared at the screen until my eyes dried out and my fingers went numb. It wasn't the cheating. It was the normalcy of it all. How practiced she was at deception. She'd become fluent in betrayal, and I had no idea I was her audience of one. Still, I needed more. I started planning phase 2 the next morning. This wasn't just about finding out the truth anymore. It was about understanding how long she'd been rewriting our life without my knowledge. And I would take everything she built on that lie, tear it down piece by piece, and let her feel the echo of every lie she thought I'd never uncover. I wasn't going to confront her, not yet. There were still too many strings I needed to pull, and I had time. The psychologist's office was tucked between a nail salon and a high-end juice bar, the kind of place that blends into the white noise of suburban comfort. I sat in the car across the street for 20 minutes before going in. The appointment I booked under a fake name was for a session with the same therapist my wife had seen every other Thursday for the past 6 months. I recognized the name on the door. Dr. Leving. She'd mentioned him in passing once, calling him insightful but a little intense. The man specialized in couples therapy and rebuilding self-trust. I didn't need therapy. I needed reconnaissance. I was early, but the receptionist smiled and told me the doctor would be ready soon. I used the time to study the space. Minimalist decor, soft jazz playing overhead, books arranged too neatly to be genuine. It was clear the entire setup was meant to disarm. At 2:03 p.m., I was called in. I didn't say much during the appointment. I let the man talk. I gave vague answers, said I felt disconnected from my partner, asked how people usually reconnect after betrayal. The doctor tilted his head at that. I gave him nothing specific, but I made sure to glance at the appointment book on his desk when he left to grab some resources. Her name was there. Same day next week. Same time. That was all I needed. When she said later that night she was meeting a friend for coffee next Tuesday, I kept my face still. She poured herself a glass of wine and curled up next to me on the couch like nothing in her world was unraveling. The following Tuesday, I watched her leave from my parked car 2 blocks away. She wasn't headed to any cafe. She drove out past the city and turned onto a winding road that led to the kind of places that rent rooms by the hour and overcharge for mediocre wine. The hotel was nestled in a wooded area just off the highway. Not too flashy, but definitely discreet. She parked. A moment later, a sleek silver Tesla pulled up. The man who got out was the same one I'd seen on the camera, the one from the fridge photo. He opened her door like it was routine. They walked into the hotel together. That moment should have broken me, but instead it hardened me. The next day I bought a used Toyota Camry off Craigslist in cash. It was an unremarkable gray, the kind of car you forget as soon as it passes. I spent the better part of the afternoon installing a covert camera behind the center air vent. The angle caught everything through the windshield. Anyone entering or exiting the hotel. I parked it down the hill in the lot across from the entrance and left it running on a backup battery and wireless signal. Every person who walked in or out would be time-stamped and recorded for 2 weeks. I even positioned a dash towel just right to avoid any reflections or suspicion. She'd never see it coming. While that surveillance collected footage, I started working on something more brutal. I forged a dating profile for her lover using his name, some of his photos, and a list of likes I scraped from his public social media. Then I created fake messages, explicit, shameless stuff. I used a burner email to register him on a cheater's website and quietly leaked the account through a tip line to her company's internal communication system. The fallout came fast. Within 48 hours, an internal investigation was launched. HR locked her out of the system. Her manager called her in for an urgent compliance issue. I stayed quiet, watching the fire spread. Her lover, it turned out, had been subcontracted on a government initiative through a third-party firm. The account I made got picked up by someone higher up during the background vetting. His contract was pulled within 3 days. My wife was put on indefinite leave, pending review. While she spiraled and tried to understand what went wrong, I visited the courthouse. I filed a preliminary petition in family court. I included screenshots from the hotel footage. I attached the lease details for the Tesla under her name. I submitted financial statements showing payments made to high-end restaurants, hotel bookings, and even an online store receipt for a cologne she'd never gifted to me. The receipts were in her handwriting. The payments were on our joint card. All of it painted a very specific picture. To make sure the foundation of my claim was concrete, I forged 2 contracts for consulting services she'd supposedly provided. One for photography, one for marketing support, both signed by her and clients that didn't exist. I also added a scanned copy of her signature next to a gift purchase from a high-end jewelry site. I'd found the gift in his social media photos, a watch with a rare band only sold by one store in town. I knew because I checked. She paid for it using a one-time PayPal transfer that I traced through her email. The judge accepted the emergency filing without blinking. She hadn't even been served yet, and already the court froze a portion of her bank assets. She had no idea. She still kissed me goodnight. By now, the hotel footage had captured several visits, not just with him. 2 other men arrived on separate days. One drove a rental car, another had out-of-state plates. She met them with the same eagerness, the same smile, the same goddamn perfume she wore when we first started dating. I knew because I could almost smell it through the screen. But that wasn't the worst part. While reviewing the footage, I noticed something else. A slip of paper being handed off. It happened twice. The second time, she took out what looked like an envelope from her purse and gave it to the man in the gray jacket. I paused the video, enhanced the frame. I couldn't see the contents, but I recognized the folder. It was from our filing cabinet, one of mine. She was giving away something of mine. At that moment, I knew this wasn't just cheating. This was calculated, manipulative, systematic. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled up the files from our shared drive, combed through every document I could. Her scanned folders, her archives, her email attachments. All of it. Buried deep in a zip archive was a notarized letter she'd never mentioned. A letter of authorization. With my name, my forged signature, granting her limited financial control over one of my accounts. It was dated 3 months ago. She was planning something. I forwarded the file to my lawyer and marked it for fraud review. Then I sent one more message, an anonymous tip to the state's Financial Crimes Division. 2 days later, I got a ping. A new case number had been opened. Fraud suspicion, anonymous source, investigation pending. I closed the tab and shut the laptop. Across the room, she was folding laundry, humming to herself, completely unaware that the walls were beginning to close in. I'd laid the traps. The string was tightening. I wasn't ready to pull it yet. But soon. 2 weeks crawled by before I triggered the next stage. I let her live in the illusion that the worst had passed. She told me HR was reviewing her suspension, blaming some misunderstanding with internal protocols. I played supportive, brought her tea, nodded in all the right places. She didn't realize the noose was already tightening around her ankles. When she launched a new business with one of her hotel regulars, Rick, the slick type with a too white smile and permanently ironed shirts, I wasn't surprised. I already knew about him from the surveillance footage. Together they opened a branding agency downtown. Flashy on the surface, hollow underneath. They pushed hard online, polished images and posts about empowering clients. It gave me exactly the opening I wanted. I reached out under a fake identity offering them a free photo shoot, claimed I was building my portfolio and loved working with startups. She bid immediately. When I arrived, dressed differently, bearded, glasses, and unfamiliar face, I brought borrowed camera gear and a cover story. During the shoot, I planted tiny mics under the table in the conference room. I positioned their office laptop in several shots, and while moving it, installed a network packet sniffer into their Wi-Fi. By the time I left, their system was mine. Liam, my tech friend, tapped into the network later that night. He pulled every email, every message, live and archived. What we found wasn't just unethical, it was criminal. Rick and my wife had been falsifying invoices, inflating service reports, even blackmailing a supplier into offering free services under the threat of an anonymous HR complaint. They were also skimming tax payments by laundering revenue through fake shell accounts. She'd gone from cheating to embezzling without skipping a beat. I compiled it all. Voice logs, screenshots, PDF exports of client communications. Then I anonymously submitted everything to the IRS whistleblower unit. The investigation began quietly, but within days their business accounts were frozen. Bookings dried up. Clients vanished. Her Instagram posts stopped. At home, she barely ate. She kept checking her phone and whispering, "What is going on?" I just shrugged and kissed her forehead. While she panicked, I went to her new apartment one evening. She hadn't changed the locks, sloppy. I used our old spare and slipped inside. Her place was neat, sterile, like a hotel suite without a soul. I found the old laptop tucked in the closet, the same one she used back when we still trusted each other. Password protected, but Liam cracked it in under 10 minutes. Inside were scans of loan applications and credit accounts opened in my name. Fake signatures, fake IDs, all forged. She'd been slowly bleeding my financial identity for nearly 2 years. I handed everything to my lawyer. His response was immediate. We filed for financial fraud and identity theft. The court responded by placing a lien on her new car and freezing the last of her accessible accounts. A week later, she was locked out of her building. She had no idea it was all orchestrated by me, still believed the world was randomly turning against her. The final piece fell into place with the launch of my next move. I hired a digital van ad company and storyboarded a looped presentation. It featured hotel entrance footage, edited screenshots from her messages, and audio snippets from her calls with Rick. The title was bold, clean, and brutal. Warning, manipulator in action. The van would circle downtown on her birthday, her favorite day of the year, when she usually bragged about taking control of her life. But I wasn't done. Days before her public unraveling, I found something buried deep in the cloud archives Liam had extracted, a photo of her handing an envelope to another man outside the hotel. I couldn't see what was inside, but the folder matched one we used for sensitive legal documents. She was handing off my records, possibly financial, possibly personal. She didn't just betray me physically or emotionally, she leveraged my trust as a weapon. She weaponized our history. I watched her walk through each day now like she was carrying invisible chains. The confident woman who once strutted out of the house in heels and lipstick now kept her eyes down, wore hoodies, avoided eye contact. Rick ghosted her after the IRS freeze. Her friends stopped liking her posts. Her company suspended her indefinitely. She was unraveling, but I still hadn't confronted her. And that was the part that scared her most, that I was still smiling. She asked me one night if I thought they'd let her appeal the investigation. I looked at her and said, "Probably. You're good at explaining things." She smiled weakly. I almost felt pity. Almost. The only thing left was the reveal. The moment her image shattered beyond repair. She still didn't know I knew everything. Still thought I was the clueless husband nursing a broken heart in silence. That false belief was my last, sharpest blade. The next move would cut the deepest, and she'd never see it coming. Her birthday fell on a Saturday. The city was alive with spring crowds and tourists, perfect for what I had planned. I rented a digital van, a slow-moving billboard on wheels, set to loop a 60-second video titled, "Warning, Manipulator in Action." It rolled through downtown, passing her old office, her gym, the park where she used to take pictures of her happy life. The footage played in silence, hotel surveillance, blurred figures entering rooms, snippets of messages she'd sent to her lovers, audio overlays of her voice, laughing, flirting, lying. No direct identifiers, nothing legally actionable, just enough for everyone who knew her to recognize her. Within hours, the video hit TikTok. A local blogger filmed the van and posted it with a caption, "Scorned husband or cyber vendetta." The post went viral. Comment sections exploded. Her name trended locally by midday. She tried to sue. My lawyer met the attempt with a counterclaim, backed with every document I had gathered. Loan fraud, unauthorized use of my identity, co-conspiracy and financial misconduct. I didn't even need to bluff. I had hard copies. I had email trails. I had timestamps and metadata. Her lawyer, probably expecting a case about emotional damage and social humiliation, suddenly found himself staring at a multi-layered fraud file thicker than a phone book. They dropped the civil claim before the week was out. 40. The investigation into the loan schemes moved faster than I anticipated. She was called in for questioning, officially, by the state's fraud division. I wasn't there, but I knew when it happened. She came home looking pale, silent, eyes flickering toward her phone every 10 minutes, like she expected another bomb to go off. One already had. At the same time, I filed to contest parental custody. I attached evidence of her unstable behavior, her extensive travel history unrelated to work, the fraud investigation, and even her own messages admitting to infidelity and misconduct. My lawyer didn't need to embellish anything. The judge issued a temporary custody ruling before the hearing, giving me full guardianship and freezing her access to the joint parenting accounts. She didn't protest. Not once. She just left the courtroom that day without looking back. By the end of the month, the apartment we once shared was sold. The proceeds went straight to a new house, modest, off-grid, but clean, tucked near a stretch of wild Montana land where the boys and I could breathe freely. The air tasted different there. Not cleaner, just honest. I opened a small workshop attached to the house, handmade knives, steel, wood, sweat, something permanent, something sharp. The boys helped with sanding, testing balance, designing. Every Saturday we rafted on the nearby river or worked on restoring the old camper I picked up from a neighbor. I kept a journal of it all, not for a book or a blog, just for us. She disappeared. Last I heard, her bank accounts were seized for investigation. Rick was never formally charged. He vanished after his contract collapse. She applied for work at several places, but most flagged her immediately. Her name had become toxic online, thanks in part to that video. I never reached out, never called, never blocked her either. And then, one evening, months later, an envelope showed up. The handwriting was unfamiliar. The return address led back to a law firm I didn't recognize. Inside, one folded sheet, brief and precise. She's asking for a meeting to explain. She believes she owes it to you and the children. She's willing to sign anything you require in exchange. I didn't hesitate. I walked outside, lit the envelope on fire with the same lighter I'd kept since college, and dropped it into the metal fire barrel beside the shop. It curled and vanished in the heat, along with every last piece of her I hadn't already erased. She'd owed us honesty once. She spent years bearing that debt. I told my boys the truth when they were old enough to understand. Not all the details, but enough. Enough to know that sometimes the people who say they love you the most are the ones who hide knives behind their back. That night, we roasted marshmallows in the backyard. The sun dipped low over the river. One of them asked what we'd do if she ever showed up again. "We don't look back anymore," I said quietly. They nodded. Nothing more needed to be said. I spent the rest of that night in the workshop, forging a new blade by hand. Polished oak handle, tempered steel, clean lines. I carved one word into the spine before I was done. Freedom. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.